All right, so today we're going to be taking a musical IQ test, and if you've ever applied to music school, you know that there is some form of musical aptitude exam that you have to go through, whether it's ear training or sight reading or whatever. These sorts of things are normally administered by the music faculty, but the test that we are taking today was developed at Harvard by a cognitive science research team. This team has published some fairly controversial research on the universality of music. I'm very excited, but also maybe a little bit skeptical about this musical IQ test. What exactly is it going to test? Let's find out. You're now taking test 1 of 3. This test is about hearing tuning in music. For each question on this test, you will hear 2 examples of the same music. Sometimes the singer will be in tune with the music, but in other clips the singer will be out of tune with the music. Your job is to choose the example where the singer is more out of tune. All right, so in tune in this case, I'm assuming, means more locked to the grid of 12-tone equal temperament, which is a very Eurocentric way of thinking about tuning. If you're from a culture who hasn't adopted 12-tone equal temperament in their music, your ability to discern different pitches within 12-tone equal temperament won't be as good as, say, mine would be. That said, your musical IQ might not be lower because your ability to discern pitches in another tuning system might be a lot higher than mine. So,
perception and cognition result from some sort of complex interplay between our genes and our experience. But in humans, the vast majority of experiments that have been conducted are on members of Western societies because that's where most of the scientists are.
Now we'll begin the main test.
Like many men I can behave. Like many men I can behave.
Second one was definitely spicier.
I could fly through the sky on the open sea. I could fly through the sky on the open sea.
You can hear the auto-tune in some of that. I'm not sure if this is the best way of testing any of this, but yeah, the first one was the spicier one.
I know your voice. I hear it from the depths of the void. I know your voice. I hear it from the depths of the void.
The first one, I guess you could make the argument that it's saying more out of tune with the music, so being able to match tuning systems since the music is in 12-tone equal temperament, I guess. That one's interesting because the vocal melody is just 2 notes a half step apart. I guess it's just being able to tell like what the half step is supposed to be. It's the first one.
Stay long as you like, it's a sad vocation. Stay long as you like, it's a sad vocation.
Oh, okay.
Hold on to. Come back out to hold on to.
That one's tricky because they're both a little off. The music also isn't giving much pitch information, but okay.
Air traffic control, I'm coming down, was waiting on your word, flying round and round. Air traffic control, I'm coming down, was waiting on your word, flying round and round.
It's easier when you're listening to something with a piano because it's more locked to any kind of grid. The first one, yes. That one's tricky because the vocals are just really buried in the mix. I'm gonna guess the first. That one's tricky. That sounds like the background music is not super in tune. Maybe the second? Yeah, okay.
I love my husband, Kleinborn Park star. He takes me driving and then leaves me in the car. I love my husband, Kleinborn Park star. He takes me driving and then leaves me in the car.
You completed the tuning perception test. All right.
He takes me driving and then leaves me.
Okay, so these are all pop vocal melodies that have varying degrees of auto-tune towards 12-tone equal temperament. And that's how we're defining tuning perception and therefore musical IQ. This is fun, but like, what if there was an example of Indian Carnatic music? Would we be able to tell differences of tuning between two examples? Or even more far out, like Javanese gamelan music.
Pitch perception is a lot more interesting than you might expect. There's a whole bunch of different facets to it, and those can be teased apart if you respect the diversity of human experience.
This is very Eurocentric in its approach to musical IQ, which is fine, it's fun, but just know that if you're having trouble with any of this stuff. Anyway, this test is about hearing melodies in music. For each questions on this test, you'll hear the same tune 3 times. Each time, the tune will be in a different key. This is like singing a song in a higher or lower voice. Okay, I guess that's a way of explaining it to a lay audience. But one of the tunes will be the odd one out. Its notes will have changed. Your job is to choose the odd one out. Interesting, so this is about your ability to detect intervallic contour across multiple keys. Okay. That third one had that spicy higher note. Let's go with 3. That third one, the first interval was off. So we'll do number 3. The first one was off. Ooh. Yeah, this is tricky. Melodic memory ain't no joke. Okay, the second one was the different one. It's tricky because if the first two are different, you have to remember what the first one is in relationship to the third one, and it's going to be in a different key. So, tricky. Dear Lord. Either the third or the first one. Man, that's hard. Ah. Third one on that one. That was easier. It's whenever anything gets more non-diatonic, it becomes easier. So the second one's the oddball. That's tricky. Number 2, I'm guessing. Three, you're the bad boy. Okay, so that one was fun. I like that one. That was tricky, but I feel like that did a pretty good job of testing musical memory. And I found actually while I was listening to it, I was imagining fingerings for those examples and how I would play them on a keyboard. So if the fingerings didn't match between the examples, that would be another indicator for me that they were not the same melody. Because as I've talked about on this channel, there's a lot of our musical perception which is embodied. In other words, what you're doing physically with your body, whether it's dancing or moving or playing an instrument, or even whether or not you're balanced, can affect your perception of things like meter and time and all sorts of things. Anyway, let's keep going. This test is about hearing the beat in music. Oh, okay. I'm gonna have some opinions about this. On each question, we'll play you 2 examples of music. Each example will have a beat track playing along with the music. In some examples, the beeps will be on the beat, and in other examples, they will not be on the beat. Your job is to tell us which of the examples has the beeps which are most on the beat. Sometimes it will be very hard to tell. Okay, so we could get philosophical here and immediately question like, what is beat? But I'm gonna try and do my best to give the correct answer for the confines of this test. So, here we go. Okay, I think the second one, technically, but no, all right. That was interesting, all right. I see what they're doing it. The fact that the beep is pitched is interesting. I'm wondering if pitch perception is at all going to influence beat perception. I don't know. Sometimes they're delayed a little bit, but the music feels better if the beat is delayed a little bit. So it's almost like you're countering your musical intuition by saying what it is objectively on the grid. I think that's probably the reason why I got the first question wrong, not to make any excuses, but yeah, so the first one was more on the beat. It's a little delayed. That one's tricky because both of them I feel like are slightly off. The second one was more on top of it and the first one was slightly behind it. I'm gonna say the first one, yeah. The beeps don't have a sharp transient, so it's a little trickier. And the cutoff of the beep actually affects the feeling of the groove, articulation. And when you cut the note off, determines a lot about how the groove feels. So the second, yeah, but... First, all right. Second. Wow, they put the beeps on 1 and 3. That one's evil. That one was so jarring to me, I wasn't actually able to really focus in on it. Whoa, okay. I'm gonna guess the first one, but honestly, oh God. 1 and 3? Guys, come on. All right, that's in 3/4. I guess that's an interesting change of pace, but yeah, sure. Ah, damn it. Oh well. Okay, I completed the beat perception test. Okay, so it seems like most of these examples were quantized from their original recordings and just lined up to a grid artificially. But even if that's the case, all of the examples were European-based music or Western music. If there was any salsa involved, for example, or any Afro-Caribbean or Afro-Peruvian or Colombian or Brazilian or any of that, probably the results of the beat perception test on musical IQ would be quite different. And just think about how I reacted to listening to the beeps on beats 1 and 3 in that one example. They put the beeps on 1 and 3. That one's evil. That's not insignificant. The way that beat and accent is conceptualized in that jazz music, and therefore how we perceive it, is different. And that's in a style of music that a lot of Western listeners would be familiar with. The test does not account for the fact that different styles of music have fundamentally different perceptual frameworks. In other words, it sounds really dumb to accent 1 and 3 when it should be 2 and 4. The examples of music that they're using to test perception, and therefore musical IQ, all come from a very specific cultural tradition. This is, of course, somewhat unfortunate, because there's a long history of this sort of thing outside of music, using European cultural and artistic standards to define intelligence. Not to get embroiled in all of that, but what I'm saying is that if your musical IQ when you take this test is not very high, it doesn't mean that you're not musical. It just means that you have not conformed to this incredibly narrow set of standards that they're defining as musical intelligence. So, anyway, our estimate of your musical IQ is 118. All right, cool. We estimated the score in the same way that real IQ tests do, based on all the other people who have taken the test. We said 100 is the average, great. Melodic discrimination is where I have failed the most. Mistuning perception, I think I'm the best. I'm the 93rd percentile. Beat alignment, I feel like I should be better at beat alignment as a bass player. So check this out. Even if your musical skills could use work. All right, so I really don't like this, because this wasn't testing for musical skills or musical abilities. It was testing for very specific kinds of music perception as they related to a European standard of music. None of this tested your ability to perform music, like the sorts of things you might get tested on at music school, nor did any of it test your ability to listen to music or appreciate music or enjoy music. So the utility of this, even though it's couched in fancy scientific whatever nonsense, it's basically a fancy BuzzFeed article. Oh, this is cool though. You can like zoom in. I guess BuzzFeed doesn't do that. I don't like this at all. We think that a performance on a test like this might accurately predict people's ability to play a musical instrument or sing. I don't think that at all. Again, this is a very narrow kind of approach to thinking about music. Now, I don't want to knock on any of this too much, because it is interesting, it's well designed, and I'm sure the people who worked on this put a lot of thought into it, but it is very narrow in its scope. So, yeah. Music Lab, Musical IQ. Hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this video, please consider joining my Patreon, because it's my patrons over at my Patreon that make this channel possible. You can definitely go check out themusiclab.org/quizzes/MIQ if you'd like to take this IQ test for yourself and see how you score. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching.